The deep echoes of the bell that marked the end of the night shift at the smelter reached Vera's ears through the swaddle of dreams and blankets, and she pulled the furs over her head, snuggling deeper into her warm cocoon. The smell of old ash and freshly stacked fire, of frost, Miriam and tundra cotton filtering through the pillowcase was homely, reassuring, a little island of safety she'd carved out for herself. Home. Temporary, yeah, but that was always the case, so you had to enjoy it while it lasted. She counted the muffled strokes, vaguely pleased that she had at least another hour before she had to get herself ready, in time for the second bell that would drag the day shift workers out of bed, into the tavern for a quick meal, for those able to afford it, and then back to the mines. Markarth never slept, pulsing day and night with its extractive heartbeat. It devoured its laborers like a great hungry beast, spitting out bones and broken bodies, but there was always more supply than demand, somehow. A buyer's market. The bell struck another time, and Vera froze. Oh, shit. She hauled herself out of bed, catching the edge of the chamber pot with her heel and sloshing around its nocturnal contents. Stumbled around in mute panic, trying to pull on her clothes, tripped outright over her boots, and almost went sprawling, but caught herself, and then forced herself to stop. Breathe. You're fine. Everything is fine. The old, ingrained panic of sudden flight, of mornings just like these where you thought you had found safe harbor, until the telltale crackle of approaching gunfire receded with her breaths. That world was behind her. Undnar wouldn't melt. He could wait for a bit while she got herself ready, and if not, then perhaps he didn't need her help all that much. If fate wanted to take the lure of coins out of her hands, then maybe that was for the best. With any luck, the Nord had already found someone else to take him traipsing around the countryside. Still, Vera put on her traveling gear. The mismatched pieces of armor she had bought or bartered from huntsmen were aesthetically underwhelming, but they were sturdy and practical. The bow, though, was a jewel. Light as a feather, supple, the yew polished to a warm, creamy glow, and soft as velvet to the touch. A parting gift from a Bosmer hunter she met on the road to Markarth. It was convenience and safety at first, but he'd grown sweet on her. Just sweet, too, in a slightly monosyllabic, taciturn kind of way. But what his tongue lacked in eloquence, it made up in other skills. He was headed somewhere out west, some village, Riverrun or Riverwood, and they traveled together for 2 weeks, in the worst blizzard Vera had ever seen. "You're not going to ask me to come with you?" She'd teased, in the relative warmth of their shared tent, her hands snaking down the hard planes of his abdomen, following the trail of coarse hairs until he tensed with a groan, the bronze skin over his chest breaking out in goosebumps. He tightened his arms around her. "If I did, would you say yes?" There was a sadness to him. They both knew the answer. "I'm getting old, V. I want to settle down somewhere, have a roof over my head in the winters." She laughed, rolling over him, his hands on her hips guiding her in place. "Want to tell me about your arthritis too, old man?" He had chuckled, a boyish grin in a face that wore its years without apology. "I'll show you arthritis." He had taught her to shoot, putting unnecessary mileage on his journey, little excuses for the detours. Once, a lifetime ago, Dima had shown her how to handle a sniper rifle. It wasn't the same. The bow was a hell of a lot more work. But some things carried over. She hooked the unstrung bow to her pack and hurried into the common room. Bothella greeted her with a curt head shake and a satchel thrust in Vera's direction. The old woman was in the middle of helping a customer. Gorza, her apron stained with soot and the back of her dress streaked with the sweaty work of the forge, was grousing about the idiot apprentice. It was, as far as Vera could tell, a sort of hobby. Vera waved at the Orsimer smith and snatched the proffered satchel from Bothella's outstretched hand. "Should last you for a week. Don't get yourself killed. Get me some canis root on your way back." "Where's Muiri?" Bothella's eyes darted from the scale she was using to weigh Gorza's order of fire salts. "I sent her to the Khajiit. That moon sugar won't restock itself. Perhaps she could catch Muiri on her way out of town." if Undnar and his sidekick were set on leaving the same day. By the time Vera got to the tavern, the Silverblood Inn was packed to the gills. Most of the miners had filed out, but at least 24 soldier types in Imperial armor, chipped around the edges and dirty as could be, were milling around, swinging between drunkenly bawdy and drunkenly rowdy. Vera cast her eyes about the place, catching Frabbiai's gaze. Klepper's long-suffering better half motioned with her head and pantomimed an eye roll before bustling over to a group of particularly loud military men at the large table in the corner. They had started a song, Ragnar the Red, as per usual. There was no sign of Undnar. Oh well. She quickly dismissed the brief twinge of disappointment at the thwarted prospect of gold and hung on to the relief lurking beneath the other emotion. This was for the best. She could still go out into the hills for a few days. Getting out of Markarth while the Thalmor were feeling particularly vigilant wasn't such a bad plan. She might as well get breakfast before. One of the soldiers jostled her on his way to the bar, slurring something that might have been meant as an apology, but sorely lacked consonants to pass. Vera righted herself, looked up, and there was chitin suit from the previous night. The Dunmer was propping up the wall on the other side of the tavern, partially obscured by the shadows of the massive hearth. Apparently, he had been watching her for some time because he motioned with his mug the second Vera's eyes landed on him. He had foregone the anonymity of his helmet for the sake of his drink. No Undar, though. Vera exhaled through her nose, trying to quell the sudden flare of unease. At this point, it was a little too late to backpedal. Maybe Demon Chops would just announce that they had moved on and hired someone else, and that would be the end of it. She made her way over to the back of the tavern, to the throng of bodies. Red eyes followed her progress. The Dunmer looked faintly amused. Like a slaughterfish looks vaguely jovial before it tries to bite your leg off. The soldiers at the large table abandoned Ragnar the Red to his decapitation and were hollering a new lyrical offering about bears. I thought you two had left already. Demon Chops lifted an eyebrow, the sharp wings of his facial tattoo accentuating the prominent brow ridges. Demon Chops lifted an eyebrow. And be deprived of the pleasure of your guidance? No, no, he gestured with his drink. Klepper's appalling Canis root tea, judging by the smell and the steam. Took a sip and made a face. Foul liquid. Vera felt a brief flicker of solidarity, quickly dispelled. Demon Chops' eyes trailed over her in assessment, lingering on the bow at her back. Whatever conclusion he came to, it didn't look particularly sanguine, based on his expression. It seems that you're still in luck, Outlander. My patron is very committed to this arrangement. He's a stubborn Nord, you'll find. Vera narrowed her eyes. Either there was some layered subtext to his strategic pauses that she was missing spectacularly, or he just enjoyed the sound of his own gravitas. Outlander. I'm a Breton, give or take. The reach extends all the way to High Rock, you know. He chuckled, his eyes scanning the room behind her. I do hope you're not one of those forsworn types. I've heard they're as wild as a pack of beasts. Vera stepped around him to lean against the wall. This little chat had forced her to stand with her back to the rest of the tavern, and the door. And the small hairs at her nape were starting to wiggle in protest. There's a very nice Dunmer museum if you're looking for something more civilized. His lips quirked, but he forced his face into something approximating seriousness. Are you offering a tour? I shudder to think how much that'll cost me. An arm and a leg. Those traps at the entrance are to die for. Calcelmo's pet project was a sort of a local joke in Markarth. The museum wasn't open to the public, unless the public didn't mind shedding some fingers and toes in exchange for its edification. Vera wondered what the Altmer kept in there. Her quip earned her a throaty cackle, gravelly and surprisingly artless. Sounds like a charming place. He paused, sipped his tea, and winced again. The dwarves were a clever race. I wonder what happened to them. Blew themselves up, most likely. Vera decided not to volunteer that particular nugget of wisdom. They watched in silence as two Nords ambled through the entrance. The larger one, red-haired and almost as wide as he was tall, looked a bit like her prospective employer. Where is Undnar? I'm certain he'll be along any moment now. When he didn't meet us in time for breakfast, I was instructed to wait. He motioned a ta-da with his hands, and so here I am. There was a dry tartness under the humor. Do you always do as you're told? Now where had that come from? His eyes flicked to hers. Under the right circumstances, he availed himself of another sip of tea, and for the right price, he turned away, scanning the room. It was a dubious improvement. From this angle, the Dunmer didn't seem quite so alien, but what he lost in otherness, he made up in other unpleasant reminders. There was one particularly bad gang that had sported a similar look, the head shaved on the sides, but with a crest of spiky hair on top. Something to do with a genre of music, gone extinct long before Vera's time. The metal glinting in the Dunmer's ear set Vera's teeth on edge, her back muscles tensing in memory. Breathe. Dima's motto for the years they'd watched out for each other. She and Martha and him, then Saeed and Jules, their little family. Dima, with his glasses, more electric tape than plastic frame by that point, and his goddamn accordion and his sniper rifle. Use your eyes, not your memories, V. We're not our history. Use your eyes. Vera forced to take another look, her howling ghosts quieting down. Demon chops. She tried it for size. The nicknames had helped early on, to domesticate the alien physiques instead of screaming herself hoarse from terror and alienation. It also helped with seeing past the similarities, to make them into people, not types. Lovenar had become jaundiced beanpole, to his face too, and he had laughed himself silly when she accidentally slipped in a fit of pique over a botched potion in his vague instructions. Fendo was old man, or sometimes Captain Grumpy. She was still testing one out for Murray. Someone must have busted the Dunmer's nose back in the day. A decent reset job as far as Vera could tell, but it had left him with a slightly hooked nasal bridge. Sharp facial structure. Check. Oak nose. Check. Red eyes. Check. No horns. But she supposed that was splitting hairs at this point. Pitchforks could be acquired. Even Gorza's feckless imperial helper could probably forge one in a pinch. She stopped herself at speculating about cloven hooves and forked tails. Enjoying the view, Outlander? He didn't turn to look. Just the corner of his mouth hitched upward. Do all Dunmer have facial tattoos? That. He paused, ruminating. Not all Dunmer. Why, do you fancy one? Fancy one what? A facial tattoo? Or a Dunmer? Vera quickly turned her gaze back to the rest of the tavern, trying to shake off the mild and entirely uncalled-for embarrassment. Focus, you nitwit. Where in the seven hells was Undnar? Ah, there you are. There you are. Finally. Just in time with her uneasy thoughts, Undnar's massive figure materialized in the open doorway that led to the chambers. One of the maids, Vera couldn't remember her name, a young Nord woman with hair so blonde it was practically white, and a figure that ensured customer loyalty much better than the inn's overpriced swill, scurried past Undnar, her clothes suspiciously rumpled and her braids suspiciously in disarray. She had a slightly dazed smile on her face. Dumbass? Vera thought. Undnar wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and grinned wider, wagging his eyebrows in their general direction before making his way over, pushing through the drunken soldiers like a plow. An ale and some fried eggs, barkeep. Make them nice and runny, will ya? Well, someone's had a good morning and worked up an appetite. No wonder Demon Chops had looked sour. About time, the Dunmer grumbled, before detaching himself from the wall, emotion with his now empty cup. Somehow, he had overcome his revulsion and finished the drink. By D, go ahead, I'm right behind you. Good thing I was late, I guess. Vera muttered under her breath. Matter of perspective. Not that I wasn't enjoying the waiting game. First, Vera summarily ignored the vaguely sardonic purr at her back, and proceeded to one of the small tables in the corner, tiny thing, and therefore empty of other patrons, with only 2 chairs, the Dwemer ones that grew out of the floor. Undnar had plopped down on one of them, motioning with both hands in invitation. Teldryn, that was the name. Vera reminded herself. Better get used to it, before she slipped and called him demon chops to his face. Teldryn offered a mock salute to his employer and took up a new spot against the wall, pointing his chin at the empty chair. "Do seat, associate. Not until you explain to me what it is you're looking for." She took the offered seat. Yes, but food first. I am famished." Undnar stretched with a contented groan, all 6'8" of him, red mane sticking out in every direction. "Frabby, beautiful kind goddess of the hearth, would you avail my friend of another order of your fine sustenance?" he bellowed, somehow managing to drown out the din of the rowdy tavern. Even from across the room, Vera could see Frabby's blush blooming on her cheeks. The woman waved her towel at Undnar in dismissal before disappearing in the kitchens. Klepper, behind the bar, shot Vera a disparaging look. "Do you see what I have to put up with? Promised you breakfast, didn't I?" Vera shrugged. "So? What?" She didn't get a chance to finish. Out of the corner of her eyes, she saw Teldryn shift, suddenly on full alert. His hand went to the hilt of the curved blade at his side. "Oh, that can't be good." Vera turned, following his gaze. No, that was most definitely not good at all. Theirs weren't the only eyes that fastened on the three newcomers. The roar of the tavern quieted down. The two-plated Altmer marched in with pompous rigidity, clanking the whole way, but the third one, all in black, the sharp point of his hood giving him an avian and vaguely predatory look, glided in with deceptive casualness. And then his eyes fastened on Undnar and he motioned with his hand, ordering his retinue to trail after him while he made a beeline for their table, looking like he was mucking through shit the entire way. Frabby, 2 plates of eggs in hand, halted at the entrance to the kitchens, then hurried on, depositing the breakfast in front of them before quickly retreating to Klepper's side behind the bar. The Thalmor planted themselves by their table. You, Nord. I have not seen you before." The Altmer's nasal timbre left very little doubt as to how he felt about Nords he hadn't seen before, or Nords more generally. "The Aldmeri Dominion is here to root out all signs of Talos worship in this city. State your business in Markarth." Undnar shoveled some eggs into his mouth and nodded with creepy enthusiasm. "Why, enjoying the sights, Justiciar. Splendid city, great cooking, good ale, and welcoming people." Zira chanced to look at the Thalmor. She'd only seen Ondolemar from afar, never in full, Justiciar glory. She could have lived without the experience. She dug into her eggs, trying very hard not to imagine Ondolemar folding himself into a Ouroboros in an effort to crawl up his own arsehole. Dermot Buthala. The Thalmor, apparently immune to Undnar's charms, squinted in suspicion. "What are you really doing here, Nord? I have received reports of a Nord openly agitating for Talos worship in the tavern yesterday evening." Trusting. Vera almost choked on her eggs. Fucking Vorstag. She'd bet half of her prospective septums that this was the lout's doing. Her eyes darted to the Dunmer, whose expression at that moment combined boredom, annoyance, and calculation. "Damn it," he mouthed between pinched lips, his teeth flashing white in the shadows. "As I said, Thalmor, What is that amulet around your neck? Show it at once." As if on command, Ondolemar's identical sidekicks bared their swords. Vera looked at Undnar's neck. Sure enough, there it was. A leather cord coiling against ruddy skin, whatever pendant it carried hidden by the Nord's scaled armor. She was still vague about the nature of the conflict, or why the Thalmor got their knickers in a twist about Talos. But the historical details were the least of her worries at the moment. What did she get herself into? She should have just slept through the meeting. Undnar heaved a theatrical sigh and relinquished his fork. All right, if I must, but you're spoiling the surprise, friend." "I am not your friend, Nord." Undnar cast his eyes at Vera and winked, and then he hooked his thumb under the cord and let the amulet dangle free, a circle of intricately knotted copper holding a single turquoise jewel in the middle. "I admit, you found me out, Thalmor. I'm in Markarth for more than just the fine cooking and the silver. An amulet of Mara, really? Why? Yes, don't look so surprised. What, did you think I was wearing Talos's axe under there? Undnar's eyes glinted speculatively. He gave the Justiciar a thorough once-over. Are you interested? The Thalmor turned an alarming shade of orange and sputtered, though the outrage had robbed him of all linguistic capacity. I just, you are too tall and too bony, like holding a damn tree. No, as you can see, I'm here to find a wife. Undnar winked conspiratorially, and I think I just did. The Justiciar pinched his lips, and then he turned to Vera, a look of appraisal, quickly replaced by disapproval, twisting his features into a mask of mildly nauseated haughtiness. This woman, the mouthful of egg stuck in Vera's throat. She groped for the first available drink, which happened to be Undnar's ale, and gulped a swallow, the carbonation hitting her nose and triggering a sneeze. She managed to bring her elbow up to her face. Just in time, too, or there would have been bits of egg on the Justiciar. Undnar leaned to the side and enveloped Vera in a one-armed hug. Isn't that right, my jewel? You demented snow troll, Vera thought, but managed to... Your brutish matrimonial customs do not interest me, Nord. Apparently, Ouroboros had found his voice again, which was a good thing, because Vera had lost hers. I am watching you. I am watching you, both of you. You can if you want. I'm the sharing sort. The demented Nord wagged one massive finger in warning. If a lady agrees, just keep your hands to yourself. Vera thought the Thalmor would have an apoplectic fit right then and there, and then the guards would somehow manage to charge them with murder. What in the ever-loving fuck had she gotten herself into? The Thalmor's eyes traveled towards the wall. And who is this Dunmer, then? Spoken like he had just stepped into something unsavory and was now trying to scrape it off his boot. Please, Vera thought, trying to hold on to the last shreds of sense. Please don't tell him he's your cousin from Morrowind. Why, he's my future bride's bodyguard, of course. Wouldn't want someone to steal her from under me, now would I? Isn't that right, my snowberry? Motherfucker, Vera thought. At her back, the Dunmer was overcome by a coughing fit. Ouroboros cocked an imperious eyebrow. Damn, Ash. It sticks with you. By the sound of it, Demon Chops was trying to cover a laugh, the bastard. Vera took another fortifying gulp of ale. All things being equal, she might as well play along. Whatever got the Justiciar out of their hair faster. She turned to Undnar. I will remind you that we haven't agreed to anything yet. It came out suitably incensed. In fact, you haven't even proposed properly. What kind of woman do you think I am, Undnar? She cranked up the outrage, which wasn't too far a stretch anyway. And then she turned her most winsome smile on the Justiciar. He didn't look won over one bit, so Vera returned her gaze to the blasted Nord, who had somehow managed to finish all of his eggs and was already making forays into the leftovers of her. Isn't that right, dearest? Undnar put on a show of chastised sheepishness. Quite right. Quite right. So, Justiciar, if you don't mind, I have a marriage proposal to discuss. Savages. Ouroboros pivoted on his heels, gesturing with a closed fist at his two goons, and the three marched out of the tavern. Undnar tucked the amulet back under his armor and grinned his chipped smile. So, Snowberry, now that that's done, you ready to talk business?